What happened in Brussels felt at home and around the world. The State Department warning U.S. citizens of possible attacks throughout Europe following the terror in Brussels. What red flags did Brussels miss? How will the U.S. respond with new security measures here at home? Let's bring in Congressman Adam Schiff. He is the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Thank you for joining us, sir.
You bet. Good to be with you.
Is that a fair criticism, the one that I just suggested, that Belgium missed this in ways that were avoidable?
It is a fair criticism. Belgium is pretty well overwhelmed, not only with the foreign fighters who are returning. They have contributed more per capita to the fight in Syria and Iraq than any other European country. But also here, it's interesting that at the press conference and talking about these two brothers who I guess were known to Belgian authorities for criminal activity, there was no indication at the press conference that they were foreign fighters. And this points up a potential homegrown radical problem as just as significant in Belgium as the problem of returning foreign fighters. But the fact that these brothers were connected to Abdessaleh, and yet they were not found after months of searching, after months of trying to disrupt the remaining plotters of those Paris attacks, that is a significant indictment of the efforts by Belgian intelligence and law enforcement.
Is it a reasonable expectation for them to be able to even get as close as they did? As you know, the new reporting is that closing in on these brothers who may or may not have been sharing an apartment with Abdel Salam, and they just were not close enough soon enough. They say that it's a miracle that they got that close, given the numbers, that the United States deals with but a fraction of the numbers of returning fighters, the number of radicals and sympathizers, and has none of the geographic disadvantages.
Well, I certainly think it's true that they have an enormous challenge on their hands, in many respects far greater than we do in the United States, because they have so many foreign fighters that have come back, because of their proximity to Syria and Iraq and the free flow of people throughout Europe, because of the massive refugee flows that make it difficult to track people. But nonetheless, here you have a situation where they knew some of the players involved in the Paris plot. They knew who was unaccounted for, at least in terms of Saleh Abdeslam, and yet people connected to him were not found after months. He was also not found after months. You know, I think with a plot this large, with a hub of activity this big in Brussels, the fact is there are many people within the community who knew about these brothers, had to know about, you know, the massive amount of bomb-making material in that search, and obviously they're not getting the kind of cooperation from within the community that they really need to supplement their investigative efforts.
Political opponents of President Obama, now running for president themselves, say this is a wake-up call, that you people on the Democratic side of the ball won't even call this what it is. You know, you play PC with this. You don't want to waterboard. You don't want to be tough. That's what Trump says. Ted Cruz says you won't even call it radical Islam. And until we get straight with the threat, we will always be vulnerable, more vulnerable than we need to be. Fair criticism.
No, I don't think so at all. And in fact, I think the comments of Cruz and Trump would essentially catalyze a movement in this country to create the kind of problem that they have in Europe. If you put the entire Muslim community under the glare of suspicion, if you insulate that community, if you make that community suspect, as those comments of Cruz and Trump I think would do, then you get a situation where those communities become very insular. They don't cooperate with law enforcement. They do shelter people who are the subject of scrutiny and concern. We have been very fortunate in this country to have a well-integrated Muslim population that has a good relationship, by and large, with law enforcement. They are part of the answer, not part of the problem in the United States. But those kind of stigmatizing comments, that kind of suspicion that Cruz and Trump want to place on an entire religion is exactly, I think, the kind of problem that Europe has had, and not something we ought to emulate here.
Congressman, thank you very much. Appreciate having you on New Day, as always.
Thanks, Chris.